Why didn't Israel have a leader after Joshua died? The beginning of Judges seems like a really critical time to have a leadership vacuum, with all the land that still needed to be claimed by each tribe. And how are we to apply this to our own lives? Who is to blame? So who is to blame for this vacuum of leadership? Was it Joshua's fault? Was he supposed to train someone up and then commission them? Well, I don't think so. Because in Deuteronomy 31:14, the Lord specifically calls Moses to call Joshua for him to be commissioned. And as far as I can tell, there is no such call or commission in the book of Joshua. So if it wasn't Joshua's fault, was it maybe the people of Israel's fault? Maybe they were supposed to be praying for a leader to lead them to finish the conquest. I don't think that's the answer either. Because the Bible is not shy about calling out the people of Israel for their many sins and the many ways in which they have turned away from God. I can find 0 passages that says the people of Israel were supposed to be praying for a leader to succeed Joshua. So why didn't the people of Israel have a leader to lead them as Judges opens? Well, actually in Judges 1, that's exactly what the people want to know. They actually inquire of the Lord who is to lead them into battle, who is to go and fight first. And the Lord replied that it was going to be the tribe of Judah. Now that may sound odd, that God seems to be changing his game plan from instead of a person leading them into battle, he's now kind of decentralizing how things are going and having tribes fighting individual battles. But I think if we look closely to the book of Joshua, we're going to see that this actually fits in with the story we're being told. I think if we look closely, what we will see is that God is doing something new. In Joshua 23, Joshua is an old man. He is advanced in years. And he has called together many of the leaders of Israel, and he has called them to challenge them, to stay faithful to the word of the Lord, to not depart to the left, to not depart to the right. And as you read through chapter 23, one of the things that strikes me is the similar nature that it has to Joshua chapter 1. Then in chapter 24, Joshua calls all the tribes of Israel to him. And he gives them a little bit of a history lesson that will go over some of the highlights of what God has done for Israel and how God has been faithful to Israel and how God has shown his goodness and his grace time and time and time again. And then after he recounts the mighty deeds of the Lord for Israel, he challenges them to fear the Lord and to serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. So really, the book of Joshua ends by setting up a question. Will the people of Israel be faithful, or will they be faithless? In Judges 1, it may seem like the tribe of Judah is starting off really well, given the success that they enjoy. But really, this feels more like the grace of God than it does the obedience of Judah. Because Judah was called to go out and fight first, but yet what they did is they turned to a brother tribe to come and fight first with them. But unfortunately, it only goes downhill from there. We see the tribe of Joseph make a covenant with the people of the land, which is a no-no. And we see tribe after tribe after tribe disobeying God by refusing to drive out the inhabitants of the land as they were called to do. So it took one whole chapter for our question to be answered. Will the tribes of Israel be faithful to God and obey him? Judges 1 says no. Judges 2 states plainly that they had abandoned the Lord. And just as Joshua had earlier foretold, by abandoning the Lord, they provoked his anger. So what the Lord did is he turned them over to their sinful pursuits, and they were going to have to face the consequences of their sin. God was doing something new with his people. Yes, it was a critical time, and we can look at the absence of leadership. But what this really was is it was a huge opportunity for the people of Israel at the tribe level to be faithful to the Lord and then flourish under the Lord. In 1 Samuel 8, the people of Israel will demand for a king to be placed over them. And God tells Samuel, it's okay, obey the people, do what they say. And then God says, they have rejected me from being king over them. The call on their life, the people of Israel, the tribes of Israel, was to be faithful to the Lord, to serve the Lord, to flourish under the Lord as their true king. But that's not what they did. They went their own way. They chased after idols. They were satisfied with not having faith in their God. They abandoned their true king. A critical time, yes, but also an opportunity missed. So I believe that what we see moving from Joshua to Judges is God's plan to do something new among his people. And I think in this, we can learn a couple things that we can apply to our life today. The first thing is to be faithful. That was their challenge. That's what they were challenged to be. Be faithful and obey the word of the Lord. But instead, they chose not to be faithful. They chose to be their own rulers, their own lords, their own kings, instead of letting God be their Lord, ruler, and king. And in doing so, they robbed themselves of so many blessings in their life. They brought on so many hardships in their life. The second thing is be flexible. Just like between Joshua and Judges, God is doing something new among his people. We see that today too. We see God doing new things among new generations. How God uses his people and his church to reach one generation may not be the same thing he does to reach the next. Now, the message will always be the same. The gospel will always be our foundation. It is our ultimate truth. But how we deliver it, how we give it, and how we serve our communities may change over the course of time. So we must always be faithful to the word and must always be flexible to what God is doing.